Authorities in South Africa say that more than 70 people have been killed in some of the worst violence the country has seen in years. Stores and warehouses across the country have been looted, and more than 1,000 people have been arrested. The unrest erupted last week after former President Jacob Zuma began serving a prison sentence for contempt of court.
This warehouse in Durban was ransacked by hundreds of people. The shelves emptied, the goods carried out in bulk. It is only one of dozens of malls, supermarkets, and small shops that were targeted by looters. Like this party supplies shop in Soweto.
It's over. It's over. I've got overheads. I owe banks money. How am I going to pay this month? With what?
In some instances, armed local residents went after the looters themselves. The government sent soldiers to the most affected areas as police struggled to control the unrest.
The current situation on the ground is under strong surveillance, and we will ensure that it does not deteriorate any further. We cannot allow anyone to make a mockery of our democratic state.
The protest started last week after former South African President Jacob Zuma began serving a 15-month jail term. He was sentenced for contempt of court after refusing to appear at a corruption inquiry. The outrage of Zuma's supporters was compounded by anger over persisting inequality and poverty in the country.
And for more, let's cross over to DW correspondent Christine Mundwa, who's standing by in Cape Town. Christine, what is the current situation in the country right now?
Sarah, the looting continues overnight. More buildings were set alight. We know that the number of people arrested is well over 1,000. And we are receiving warnings now of looming food shortages because of the disruptions in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. These are key provinces when it comes to the supply of goods into the country. In many sites in these provinces, vaccine rollout has been affected. That is going to obviously have an impact on what already was a slow rollout of the vaccine here in South Africa. There is also concern about racial tensions flaring up now because of the lack of visibility when it comes to law enforcement. You now have armed citizens defending their property, and in many cases it is fueling some racial tensions. People are also worried here about the outbreak of xenophobic violence because all sorts of criminality have now emerged from this violence and looting, Sarah.
Okay, so we're seeing criminality, but I mean, by and large, Christine, who are these people that we're seeing, for example, looting?
Sarah, the people you'll see looting are underprivileged South Africans for the most part. These are people who live in informal settlements who have been pushed further into poverty because of the pandemic and the restrictions that have come with it. And so what you're hearing from the officials in this country is that these people, their poverty is being exploited. In fact, those were the words of a senior ruling party official, that the poverty of people was being exploited. But what authorities are now investigating is that these crowds, these mobs are being stoked and prompted by a more sinister third force, because among the looters, among the people going in and stealing basic items like food and clothing, you have people lighting things up and setting things on fire who seem to want to be making destruction. And so these people are being investigated because it is believed, or at least they have reports have emerged, that there are some intelligence officials that are believed to be linked to the former President Jacob Zuma who may be behind the stoking and mobilization of the crowds that you are seeing. But the pictures you see, these are poor South Africans, desperate and hungry, who've been pushed further into poverty in this pandemic.
Okay, so I mean, overall, it is a desperate situation for many there. The military has been sent out, we understand, to assist. Why is it proving so difficult to bring things back under control?
Well, law enforcement was stretched from the very beginning. There was limited police presence. The deployment of the military is controversial in itself, Sarah, because it is essentially due to the lack and the failure of law enforcement. But what the government in South Africa, the ANC government under Cyril Ramaphosa, does not want is a scenario where you have South Africans dying at the hands of law enforcement. They have, as we understand it from the police minister, police have been asked to act with maximum restraint. And this is why in a lot of the footage you will see police officers standing helpless, watching as the crowd continues to loot and ransack. Because the narrative, of course, of this ANC government firing on black South Africans in a country with the sensitivity of the history that we have here is the last thing that this government wants to see. And of course, that military deployment in itself has been very, very limited. Only a few thousand soldiers, I think 2,000, have been deployed. It is not enough to quell the amount of unrest that we have at the moment.
Christine Mundwa walking us through what is certainly a complex and a sensitive situation there. We thank you so much for your insight from Cape Town. So why did it take police so long to react despite the warnings of unrest? Well, we asked Professor Karen Runciman, director of the Center of Social Change at the University of Johannesburg.
I think it's still a very complex and unfolding story. There are some allegations that some sections of the state security forces who may be aligned to the Zuma faction may have in some ways surreptitiously supported what is happening. Again, these are all things that are coming to light as events unfold, so it's very hard to verify these claims. But I think we are certainly in a very, very difficult situation given the scale of what we are seeing. And there are concerns about the response of police and now the deployment of army in South Africa, neither of which have a particularly good track record in dealing with these things in a way that does not escalate violence.